Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Johnson. This is Beauty Talent Talk. I'm hosting today. I have Kirsty, who's our moderator. She's going to field any questions you have. And we're excited for our guest, Lorne Lucree. Thanks, Lauren, for joining today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So thank you, everyone, for being flexible. I know we moved back the time, but this conversation, I think, is so critical. Lauren, I had approached you and was discussing the employment market. And, it has become highly competitive and just really changed drastically in the last 2 years. And when I speak with our beauty community and professionals, there's still a huge appetite to grow professionally, to take on new categories, and to diversify experience. And this has become, a challenge. There's a lot of barriers right now for targeted searches and for candidates to be able to qualify themselves for those type of opportunities. You've been really successful in your career path in being able to cross categories and different verticals in the beauty industry. I'd love for you to give us some context to how you've navigated and been so successful in crossing over those categories.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that, as I think about the career, the path I've taken wasn't on purpose nor planned, but I think was driven by kind of key curiosities that I had, driven by, a love of product and an obsession around products, and where these opportunities kind of presented themselves. But, as we were talking before the show, it was not all by accident. I think some of those opportunities were made myself based on, placing myself in these situations or in front of the right people or putting myself in the right places or getting those knowledge, et cetera, and helping to create those opportunities themselves. So whether they be connecting with, contract manufacturers or retailers or brands, et cetera, to kind of create those networks, et cetera, that help to kind of define that path. So, I think, if you think about innovation, there's different paths you can take, whether it's, focusing on a functional area or, brand only or contract manufacturer only or retailer only or whatever it might be. And I think once you start to take a big, a zoom out overall and think about it holistically, it kind of gives you a bit of a different runway to think about your career. And I would encourage all of us, to think about that. And it kind of, it's almost an enlightening moment to kind of open a bit of doors, all new doors, to think about your career a bit differently. And maybe we'll get into that today. Yeah.
And it's also been a topic we talked about, you're in the forefront. You're going to a lot of the events, you're a keynote speaker, you're, on the judge to be on panels that you're judging products, awards, etc. And how much does that kind of weigh into some of the successes or opening doors or just kind of navigating cross category, would you say?
It's all like, I have to say, like, all of those things were like, I'm a big believer in like manifestation. Like, I'm not like, woo woo, like, crystals and things like that. But I do believe in like, putting it out in the universe, what you want and what you want to be. And like some of those things of like, you know, I wanted to be on panels. I wanted to be in these places and to be doing these things, and could see myself there. And I think, I was talking to somebody the other day of, they got some mentor advice around like seeing yourself 5 steps ahead and where you wanted to be. And I think not knowing it, always thinking that way of like, okay, aspiring to that has, now manifested itself that way. So I think about those things of like, they've now materialized and it's been like a really pleasant surprise. I don't know how, and I didn't ask for them, but it's been awesome to see for it to happen. And I'm really grateful that the beauty community showed up and considers my opinion somewhat valid or worthy for some of these things, but also in a way to give back and share that expertise. So, but I think it also is a testament to, also showing up for the beauty community too, of like, of attending events, of being involved, of being engaged and supportive, and showing up for your network and going to events and showing up on LinkedIn and engaging and posting and showing you have a point of view and showing that you are engaged in the community and you have a point of view on what's happening, and that that you are that you're thinking critically, that you're thinking cross category, et cetera. Like all those things matter, even though you might not think so in silo. I think collectively they do, and it starts to begin to show. Absolutely.
Yeah, highlights your subject matter expertise.
100%. 100%.
And I do find a beauty community, I mean, there's so much embracement and we all want to evolve. We all want to learn. That's a standard trait that I see in top performers is that they're never satisfied and they want to continue to push themselves forward. I mean, being satisfied with just the status quo and really focusing on learning.
Well, it's like yeah, it is a constant dissatisfaction is like a driving force of like it's just like as my husband. But yeah, I think that's like always, always feeling like that you're, and that can be also a downside, but I feel like that's always seeking out those opportunity areas where you feel like you can prove or you don't know as driven. I mean, that's like, when I made the jump to contract manufacturing, a lot of people were like, well, like, why would you, it was like, developing at luxury brand partners, which was like, it's like a dream job, like developing with Patrick Starr, doing all these things that were like, any innovator would be like, this is awesome to be able to do. And it was, but it was also one of those things where I was like, okay, this is becoming, I could do this, but it might become repetitive. I could be doing this and I could keep doing this. Or, for me, a natural curiosity that was coming up was like, I don't know the operational side. Like, I don't know manufacturing as well as I should. And I really loved the chemists I was working with. I loved my manufacturing partners. I didn't know, like, I'm like, how much money are you making off of me? Like, what is the margins behind the scenes? Like, what does it take to scale a product? Like, what is it on the other side? Like, what are those things? And like, that became a key question on my mind. And shaping some of those like really technical skills because I'm not a chemist and I'm not, I don't have that technical background. And so the opportunity that came up was perfect to round out those skills and something that I jumped at. So it was, something that maybe wouldn't have been planned out on purpose, though, taking the CIO role at Voyant, but it was something that actually kind of fit really naturally in hindsight to round out and now has opened up a ton of doors to be able to speak to that whole side of the industry. Whereas if I only stayed in brand, I would be, very much more limited for sure.
And it's so interesting you bring that up because I was going to ask you, you think about the brand side, most look at it as a step backwards if you're on the brand to go to the supplier. And so I knew there was a strategy behind you taking on the opportunity at Voyant. But when you look at, in hindsight now, what would you say was the most valuable skill that helped you grow professionally that you now leverage moving forward, even on the brand side in just your career?
I mean, I think that this is like, I learned, there was a kind of a pivotal experience, midway through. I think about my career in two parts, like because out of undergrad, I worked in advertising actually with P&G, and that was what inspired I went back to school to get my MBA, and then I started my career in beauty. So it was kind of that was two parts, and I think there's a pivotal moment kind of after in that second part of my career where I learned a really important lesson that you really need to get you need to get something out of your job just as much as they need to get something out of you, and it really needs to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And it's hard to think that way because I am a people pleaser, and naturally, like I want to be the best student. I want to be, so I naturally exhibit those type of tendencies, and so it's hard because you just want to, when you want to people please, and so wanting to actually extract value as well for yourself out of those roles, you have to always keep in mind. And so I think that's the biggest lesson as well is like, the Voyant opportunity. Yes, it was, going to contract manufacturing that might not seem as sexy, but also it allowed me actually to create an entirely new business unit, which I did there, which was Atelier, and do a ton of research on the indie space specific to invest early stage investing, which I had no idea about, which it created a ton of connections with early stage investors, which are now paying off dividends as I know this field, and I've created a ton of ton of knowledge space and expanded my network. And so I utilized that for myself, really, but also for the business too. And so it was a way for me to kind of again create this mutually beneficial relationship. And so I would tell anybody to think about your career that way of really making sure that it's mutually beneficial. It truly is like dating, honestly. And you really need to think about it that way for sure.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Absolutely. Yeah, I created a win-win situation, basically.
Yes. Yeah, but much better articulated for sure. A win-win. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation. So let's say a candidate is in the interview process. They're interviewing, they're a makeup expert, and they're interviewing with a skincare brand, and this is something that they really want to lean in on. And the hiring manager says you have great experience, but you just don't have the specific skincare experience we're looking for. Lorne, what's a recommendation or the advice you would give for them to kind of navigate that, to be able to build some credibility and influence in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one could say like, okay, well, yeah, I don't have, I've never developed, skincare, right? You said you're going to skin. Yeah, so yeah, I've never developed skincare before, right? So you could focus on that. Alternatively, you could also say, listen, actually, there's a ton of other transferable skills that you could highlight, and I think that's where it becomes really exciting. And actually, could actually create a ton more value for the company that you're interviewing with, right? So, one is, depending on the brand, it's your ability to partner effectively with contract manufacturers and outsourced R&D partners. So, and to challenge them and to motivate them and to create newness. So, providing examples of that where you've really you leverage those relationships and the ability to create work with those outsourced partners to create magic, whether it's on skincare or makeup or whatever it is, cross category. Like, it is what it is. Being able to work with R&D at all is a skill set unto its own, which is a huge sell. The second is, what if it's a founder-led brand? I mean, that again, being able to work with a founder is a real art, I'll tell you. And so that is that, and translating their vision into a product that's successful, whether it's makeup, skincare, hair care, whatever it is a skill set that transfers very well. So that is something as well to highlight that is a transferable skill. And then the third is raw materials. So I think you're seeing this raw materials being able to be leveraged across category, and the way that you're talking about raw materials, the way that you're positioning marketing story for raw materials, and I would say then segueing into creating claim stories and crafting stories around claims and consumer perception studies, et cetera. All those things are all transferable. And so how have you done that successfully in the world of makeup and potentially other categories, et cetera, that could easily be translated? I mean, I think at the end of the day, actually, probably the technical skincare development skills is probably the least of your worries. It's all those other things that are going to give you so much more of a leg up. And actually, probably even more so if you don't have all the baggage of just developing skincare, but skincare is skincare. I think that's been some of the biggest wins that I've been able to bring to some of the opportunities I've joined, is not having some of that baggage from a fresh perspective. So Patrick Starr, when I was working with him for One Size, I had never developed color, to be honest. And Patrick is, he's Patrick Starr, which is wild with his I remember sitting across from him with the turban and the beat face. And I was like, holy moly, what? I did not see myself here, which is wild. And what am I doing? Anyway, so I'm developing for him. We're whatever, it's swatching, doing the whole thing, all this stuff and whatever. And we were talking about setting sprays, and he was describing what he wanted. And I was like, the only way you're going to get this is with an aerosol, because I came from hair, which, and hairspray and dry shampoo. And I was like, this is what you're describing, similar to dry shampoo. You can't do, in a pump, whatever, you have to aerosolize it. And so that aerosol became On Till Dawn makeup setting spray, which is now the #1 selling product in Sephora overall. God bless, selling $15 million a year. I see none of that, by the way. Yes, but anyway, but if I hadn't had that hair care experience to bring into that, it would have never saw the light of day, and to have that, it would just been another pump makeup setting spray. Anyway, so I think there is value in that cross category. You just need to frame it in a way that's really exciting and value add.
Yeah, that is a huge statement, Lorne. And I hope a lot of our listeners today take away how to frame their unique expertise into another category. That's a really interesting and exciting success story. So I want to also talk to you about, when you think about the big picture and making career moves, you've been very methodical, and you talked about this kind of 5-step. You're 5 steps ahead every time you made your career move. It sounds like you were very intentional. Do you have a method to this madness, Lorne? And do you write everything out when these job opportunities? Are you, I want to understand kind of the time and effort that you put into these roles, because I'm sure you've been approached a lot with a lot of different opportunities to really determine, is this going to move me forward? And I feel like that's been the discussion we've had, and all these roles have moved you forward to a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that it's been yes, because I think there's been uh what I didn't want to happen was to feel like I was ever plateauing. And I think that in the world of, and I'm sure there's maybe some product developers or innovation folks listening, and I feel like there tends to be a cap where you end up hitting probably a VP or SVP level, and you just kind of start to bounce around, and it starts to, um, and I think that naturally happens. And I feel like and then it becomes basically kind of like picking your category, which maybe is going to excite you or kind of interest you. And so I think it then becomes about a cultural fit or or then founder versus legacy brand or retail, partner or whatever that's going to drive excitement. And I think for me, it was about uh, uh, I think sitting in different seats along the value chain of a product. And I think that that's what was driving kind of the career path. So uh, to me, I wanted to understand from soup to nuts, from everything from upstream, our like upstream raw material, all the way to like when it's in a consumer's hands, every step along the way, and made it my job to understand that. So when it was, at Voyant, luckily I had the opportunity to work with a lot of raw material suppliers doing blue sky ingredient research, then leveraging that into formulation, manufacturing, operational, then working with on the brand side to then leverage those formulations into working with retailers, and to then leveraging that into consumer, and to then launch, et cetera, all the way through to in-home, et cetera. So um, piecing that all together, and then now being able to do that on a consulting basis and whatever the next chapter holds. So for me, that was the goal. So I think that that's the piece of it. And then who knows what the next chapter is of marrying all that together and to do something, to put all those pieces together, including in my network, to do something else. But that was my five-step plan. Others might be different of wanting to, gain cross-category experience, et cetera. But I have to say that it became more formalized as I grew more mature in my career, and I think it became more crystallized as I gained more, I think, amazing mentors in my life that helped to both inspire but also to challenge me, because I think it's true that you're a reflection of the company you keep, and that it truly I think makes a lot of sense in terms of then keeping you on your toes and continue to strive for better. Yeah.
And it's mentorship, having a mentor, being a mentoree. It's so important, I think, for every person in their career at certain levels. Can you share with me, how did you identify a mentor, and what's your recommendation if someone doesn't have a mentor, and how to approach that?
Yeah, I think that I have to say that it wasn't like, like, will you be my mentor? Um, like, like a
More
fair
natural.
bit more. Uh, it was a bit like, I think they saw me like just hungry to learn and to grow, and they kind of naturally, we just like, so, and we just stayed in touch. And there's a few, that have grown, we've grown together. And so, um, that you just naturally drive with and stuck around. And so uh, they have been instrumental in my career, and I think in different ways. Some, I'd say on a scale of more tactical, like as references, of course, and like as needed, etc. But
Yeah.
then as some more, like a bit more like from like emotional, like I was like, how do I navigate this? What do I do? Like, am I overthinking this? Help me, like whatever, like what's going on, like and kind of everything in between. And I think that that's especially as the other thing that's been, I think, that is really challenging as you get old, as you advance in your career, is that there's less and less there's less than you don't have as many folks to talk to, because there's not as many, you don't have colleagues at work always, especially if you're working in smaller indie brands, et cetera. You don't have as many colleagues at your level that you can chat with or bounce ideas, or try to to unpack things or whatever. So it's like you need to be able to have these, to be able to kind of professionally connect with, or digest things with. So that's been it's been really helpful. And it's not, it doesn't have to be 10 mentors. I have probably 3 that I really, really count as, yeah, exactly, which is great. And that's enough, I think, at the end of the day to be successful. And I think that's, or for me at least, to feel successful for sure.
I think having a sounding board, you may think you have clarity or you have the right answer, but to be able to have someone to bounce it off, get that confirmation, or sometimes get that different perspective. They're like, I didn't look at it that way.
Exactly, 100%. And like and a bit more of like and with a different point of view too. I think it's really helpful. Which is invaluable for sure.
Yeah.
Debbie, I think we're coming in for the time for around the final question. So if anybody's watching and thinking, I mean, I've been hypnotized by Lorne, but if anybody has any questions that they want to share or get Lorne's input in, please pop them in the chat and I'll bring them up. But over to you, Debbie.
So I do want to talk through our next show. So on our next episode that we have coming up next month, and the focus of the show is going to be how to hire. So I've been interviewing for over 20 years. I also have a certification in a performance-based model. And something that I've identified over the years is that, statistically saying, 90% of American hiring managers have never gone through a formal interview training. And, when as a middleman, I hear debriefs from the candidate side and the client side, and I do feel that there's a lot of value in this focus and hiring to be able to really focus on how to ask more structured, better questions, to focus on how to properly qualify candidates, and giving candidates a great positive experience is really going to be what I focus on in this show. So whether you're a seasoned executive, been interviewing for 25 years, could be a refresher, or you're somebody that just got into the game of interviewing and hiring, I think there's a lot of value. And I'd ask you, if you start off your interview with, tell me about yourself, you're my audience. So if we think about that question, which 95% of interviews generally start off that way, why do we ask that question? It's very ambiguous. It sets candidates off sometimes in a personal basis. Sometimes they get their whole career trajectory. And we often judge them as the first impression off of that question. And I think there's a better way. And so I want to talk through that and bring a lot of value to this topic. And we're going to have a resource that we provide after the fact as well. And just being able to help hiring managers and candidates have a good experience. I mean, the beauty industry at the end of the day is 1 degree of separation. It's so small. And so sometimes I don't think hiring managers ever have the intention of giving a bad experience, but it does happen. And if we can work on kind of elevating it and helping candidates be properly qualified, it's only going to work to everyone's advantage in the future in this very small industry. So look forward to covering that topic next month.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Okay. So I know, Debbie, that we have a question that we ask pretty much at the end of every show around key insights and attributes. So do you want to ask Lorne that now?
Yeah. So Lorne, I'd love to get your perspective, in when you've been hiring. So in the past, and when you hire, what are some of the key attributes? What do you look for in the interview process with candidates?
Yeah. So I think the first question might be surprising, but it's will be shocking the amount of times that I get an answer that's not what you least expect. But it's the first is when was the last time you were in a Sephora or an Ulta is the first question I ask. And only because I think, the beauty industry is very, it's requires a lot of patience, and it's so fast moving and dynamic. And I think, it requires a bit of an obsession with product. And I think having that obsession to be around product and seeing it and being immersed in it is essential. And so that I use that question at least as a barometer to understand how in tune that the candidate is. So that's the first is understanding kind of that piece, that understanding. The second is then to build off of that is understanding a product that they find interesting and innovative, and why, and have them kind of take me through the why behind it. And that can be, packaging, raw material, the usage, the insight, whatever it might be, but just to understand the thought process around why. I always find it fascinating to see how people think about product and how consumers interact with it, and how they would build out a product story, because I think that's, a product is to me, innovation is never one thing. It's never just a raw material play, and it's never just packaging. It's always this kind of the story. And so I find people that can see that sensitivity of this kind of this a well-crafted innovation story is really powerful. So having that piece to it. And then I think lastly is really kind of like how they work well cross-functionally, because I think now more than ever it's that ability to, from an innovation perspective. Luckily, where I see the industry going, which is awesome, is product development and innovation is no longer kind of a separate siloed team. I see more and more brands that were formerly, I think, really, really marketing led, evolving to be slowly, whether it's product development and marketing having a shared seat at the table, or maybe being slightly even more product led. I don't even know, but it's great. It's great. Yes. Which is like, and it shows in how the brand performs, et cetera. Maybe I'm biased, but anyway, but I think it's amazing. And so I think that, but that means that you need to have that ability to work cross-functionally, specifically with your marketing partners, and your supply chain, et cetera, partners. And so having that ability to work cross-functionally and to be able to sell in your ideas in a way that's thoughtful and respectful is really critical. So having that ability is really powerful. So that obsession with the industry, that ability to storytell in a creative way to your marketing partners, and that ability to work cross-functionally, I think is critical.
And has there been a common mistake you've seen over the years when you're interviewing candidates that you can highlight?
Yeah, I think the one is not going to Sephora and Ulta. That's for sure. So that's one. I think I think that the selling themselves short, I think, is another. I think that question you asked at the beginning of not thinking bigger about transferable skills, I think it's a good big thing of like, I think that's we work in such a creative industry, and I think sometimes people forget that they get lost in the technical details. But I think it's really you can really think about it in multiple different ways and different ways and to think that way. So I think selling themselves short about that, and then I think and then the third is, I mean, I'm old school, but like, maybe call me old school. I don't know. Maybe I look old. I don't know. But that like the follow-up and, the thank yous, the thank you notes, the follow-ups, all that stuff. It's like, I still think it means a lot, and it goes a long way. Like, I think so. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've actually touched upon the art of the thank you note, because it seems like it's got lost in translation. I'm not sure how and why.
Wild.
But I see, as a recruiter, when I'm working with talent, the ones that are so excited and they want it and they want to move forward, they are immediately producing a thank you note, and it's not something that I'm prompting them for. So yes. I think that is, it says a lot for how ambitious and really how passionate they are about the opportunity.
Absolutely.
We have had a couple of comments I just want to bring up. So one person has said the comment on how immersed they are in the culture going to places like Sephora and Ulta is a great question and a great marker, which I think a lot of people agree with. And then camaraderie is key, apparently. So I think people agree with that. Now, we are coming to the end of the show now. So if there are any final questions, please pop them in. But Lorne, I've been listening to you, and I think you've given us so much knowledge, so much around your experience and key things to think about. But if somebody were watching this and thinking they kind of want to try and replicate the kind of things that you've done, crossing boundaries and being able to be really ambitious, but in a really organic and intentional way, if you were to think of one thing to kind of offer them as a piece of advice, or the first thing for them to do, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think you create your destiny, like create these opportunities. Don't wait for it to be created for you. So, be thinking, own your destiny and really take the lead in your career and make it happen. So, I think that would be my advice. Yeah.
Great advice. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Debbie, it is unfortunately the end of the show. It always goes so quickly. I always am amazed. But do you want to take us out?
Yes. Well, thank you everyone for joining, Lorne. Thank you for having this fantastic conversation. So valuable. I really enjoyed it. And everybody have a wonderful day. See you next month.
Thanks for having me.